it's Joe here from Joe's Country Junction. I'm in the sewing room today. I had was busy sewing some star blocks, and I thought, oh my goodness, why don't I just turn on the camera and have a chat with you? So that's what I'm doing today. I know for many of you, you're probably happy to see me back. I'm happy to be back too. It's been quite a while since I've done a Sew with Joe video. Some of you who follow my blog, joescountryjunction.com, might know that I had a full-time job for a while, and I have since quit my full-time job. It was really hard to film videos or do any of those kind of things while I was working full-time. I worked 10-hour days, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday is what I worked. I would leave the house at probably 6:15, and I got home probably close to 5:30. So with being gone all that time of day, there was no time to film. After I made supper, took care of the dog, and handled the blog, that was all that there was time for on those days. And then on Thursdays was just tend to be my errand day and catch-up day for here around the house. So I am back because I quit my job, and I have more time to film now, and I'm really excited about that. I tried to film this video 2 other times. Both times I was only into the video, maybe about 10 minutes, and my phone started to ring, and the doorbell rang, and the dog needed to go out, and I just decided to start all over. So I'm here in my sewing room, and my sewing room is actually clean. I'm so excited about that because that was another thing. When I did have time to film a video, my sewing room was just a mess, and I just felt uncomfortable filming in a really messy sewing room. It's not like perfect right now, but it's pretty darn good, and I can find anything that I need to find right now, which that's a huge blessing. I have been working on a star quilt. It's just all star blocks, just simple blocks. It's just blocks like these. And I am not exactly sure what I'm doing with the blocks at this point, but I have an idea, so I'm excited about the idea. I do that sometimes. I just have something in my brain and I start making blocks. Olivia at Pumpkin Hollow Quilts, she had made quilts out of blocks like these, and she had just put them together like this and sewn them together, and it was a very pretty quilt. And I was thinking about doing that, but then I kind of decided I might put like some chain blocks in between them instead. I don't know for sure. I need to sit down at EQ and figure out what I want to do for a design. But for right now, I'm just happily sewing star blocks, and when I get about 200 of them or so, I'll probably stop and I will decide what I'm going to do with them. I have a king size bed now. I previously have never had a king size bed, so I have tons of quilts that are queen size. I have 0 that are king size. Right now there's a queen size quilt on top of the bed, and it's just sneaking over the edge and not doing much more than that. So I need to get something made for that, and this star block quilt will probably be the quilt that is for that bed. My other problem is my long arm is only a 10-foot long arm, so I can't get a full-size king quilt on the bed. So I'll probably send it to my friend Carla, who she is a long arm quilter, and you can find her on Facebook at Long Arm Quilting Inspirations. She does a great job. She has done a lot of the quilts that we've had published in magazines. She's done the long arming for those. I do have a long arm, but I'm no pro at it, and if we have something that has a lot of negative space in it, we love to give it to Carla and have her work her magic on it. So I don't know, maybe I'll even get some quilts done and eventually publish in magazines again. It's just crazy. Life has opened up a whole bunch of possibilities for me now that I'm not working full-time. I don't know if I'll be doing this forever or how long I'll be doing it, or if I'll go back and get a full-time job again or a part-time job or just hang out here at home. I'm not sure. I can keep busy no matter what I do. I have 5 grown adult children, and 3 of them are married, 4 of them have kids. I have 10 grandkids, and I have my beagle who's snoring over there. She's laying by the door, sunning herself. I have an ironing board, and her dog bed's underneath there, and it's right next to the window, and she suns herself there a lot. So anyway, I guess we're here to sew, so I should probably start to sewing. I can give you a few measurements of what I'm doing in case you want to make a star block. I've made all different kinds. Some they're very blendy, like this one it's harder to see the star, Here's one that it's only made with 2 different fabrics. Here's another one that's only made with 2 different fabrics. Here's another blendy one. Here's one that the inside and the star points are the same color, but they're different fabrics. Here's one that the inside is one color, the star points are a completely different color, and the background's a completely different color. So I just have all sorts. Here's some that the blocks are all the same. And for fabric selection, I've just opened up my scrap buckets and I have just pulled fabric, whatever I pulled, I tried not to cut into any fat quarters, but occasionally I did. A lot of times I would take my 3.5-inch bucket and that's what I would cut the centers out of. And then for the star points, those and the background were cut from my 2-inch scrap bucket. So I have strips of fabric that when I'm done with a project and there's only like this much left, I'll just cut it into strips and throw it into buckets. And so when it comes time to make a scrappy quilt like this, I just pull my strip bucket and I can start sewing right away. It doesn't take very long for me to pull fabric or anything because all I have to do is pull out a strip and cut it. So the inside block, or the inside square, as I said, is 3.5 by 3.5. These star points, I cut 2-inch by 2-inch squares for those. The corners here, they're 2-inch by 2-inch. And these side pieces that make a flying goose block, these pieces are 3.5 by 2. And so I need 4 of those, 4 of these, 8 of these, 1 of these. So that's how my blocks go. I usually sew 5 or so at a time. I have a whole big tub here of ones that are already cut. And the other fun thing I've been doing is I've been making these using the bonus triangle method. I did a video that shows how to make the bonus triangles and then how to turn those into broken dishes blocks. So these, I have 5 blocks here set out to sew. They're going to make 5 of these star blocks and they're going to make 10 of these broken dishes blocks. And so I've been making these with all the scrap leftovers from these blocks. I have an idea on what I'm going to do with these, but I'm not positive yet. But I'm excited to look for possibilities to make sure I know what I'm going to do with this. I have a good idea, but I'm not positive I'm going to do it. Again, I need to sit at EQ and see what I can do. I don't think that all of these will make a quilt that's big enough for a king size bed though, because these are just tiny. I think they finish at, they'll probably finish at 2 by 2 in a quilt. So they are little, but okay, back to sewing what we're sewing today. I keep them out on piles. I love my big ironing board or my big sewing station that has a big area to sew on. And I'm just using the star point sections and then the 3.5-inch sections. I did a whole video to show you how to do this, but I'll just recap it here a little bit. I'm going to put the square on here and then I'm going to sew from here to here. Here, maybe I should do that more carefully. From here down to here. I'm just going to sew a diagonal. I'm happy to be sewing and I'm happy to be having a chunk of time to sew today. I should look and see. I've got about an hour that I can sew with you today. If all goes well, we'll see. Whoops, something just fell. It's always crazy what happens here in the house. I just never quite know if the doorbell's going to ring or one of the kids are going to call. I'm just coming off a very busy weekend. I live very rural in northeast Iowa, and I suppose if you only listen to me via YouTube, you probably don't know that I started dating after my husband passed away in 2019, and I started dating in 2024 in April. And I had one relationship that didn't go well, and then in September I met a guy and I've been dating him ever since then, and it's been going great. We get along really good, have a good time together, and so I went down this weekend and we were able to take in a play, go out to eat, see some live music. It was a very fun weekend, and I'm As fun as it was, I'm probably happy to have a more lower key weekend this weekend, which is the plan. I like to keep something under my needle all of the time. So I left the first set of blocks in, and I'm just chain piecing. I've gone on to the next block, and I'm doing the same thing, putting that 2-inch square onto the 3.5 by 2-inch rectangle like this, and then I'm sewing on the diagonal. And I'm just working with the next block. I like to chain piece so then I don't have to worry about clipping and pulling threads, or that the threads pull up when you start a new piece. I don't like any of that. So I'm especially happy to be chain piecing. It's like my favorite. I always have something in my needle, under my needle, even if I'm not working with these pieces for the flying goose blocks. I have some pieces over here, and they make the broken dishes blocks, and I'll feed those under the machine and sew some of them in between sewing these. Okay. We're getting these done, and I'm super excited about it. The last couple of weeks that I've been sewing, I haven't gotten a ton of blocks done. I was working on this in early fall, probably around Thanksgiving time I started, and I've got about 100 blocks done, but then I stopped and did the mystery quilt, Bonnie Hunter's mystery quilt, and that kind of put me behind on this project. I had tried really, really, really hard to not let this one get set aside, but between the holidays and working full-time, I just didn't have time to keep up with these blocks. But now that I'm back at it, last week I think I got 14 sewed. The week before I probably did a few more than that. But I'm hoping this week that I get a bigger chunk of blocks done. Maybe I'd be super happy if I could get 40 done. Sometimes when I come up to the sewing room, I tell myself, okay, you can't do anything until you sew 4 blocks. So that's a way that I can program myself into getting more blocks sewn. I love sewing the star blocks. That's not the problem. It's just that there's so many other things that are calling to me too. So if you're wondering what else is calling me right now, on my ironing board, which is over here, I have the Old Town Mystery done from Bonnie Hunter. It's a top. I've got some fabric there for a backing that I just need to piece together. So that's ready for the long arm. Right now, you might be able to see I have my Hawaiian Sunset quilt top on the frame. I was going to load that, but I went to pull the backing that I had pieced for it, and I was measuring the backing to make sure I oriented it on the long arm the correct direction. And I realized that I'm just big enough. I don't have any wiggle room at all on either side of the backing, and I'm a little nervous that that might not be a good idea to do that. So I decided that I will probably add another piece to the side of the backing and make sure that it's big enough, because I don't want to get it on the frame and have issues with that. That is my oldest whip. Or UFO project. I have had that for, I don't know, I think I started in 2010 maybe. I'll have to go back and look at some point, but I've picked it up periodically, but I've never finished it. I love the quilt. I'm excited for the quilt, but the problem is that the quilt is for me. I know I'm going to keep the quilt, and I'm like most other quilters. We prioritize quilts for deadline projects. We prioritize quilts for charity. We prioritize quilts for our grandkids or our kids or an event that we have that's going on, and we don't prioritize the ones that we know that we're going to keep. So that's one I'm going to keep, and that's why that's been left on the back burner. I love the quilt. I love the bright, vibrant colors. I love everything about it. I just don't love that it's for me, so I put it off and put it off. But it's going on the long arm next, and it's time. It has cooked and stewed long enough, and it's going to be fun to get that done. The quilt is super busy with lots of bright colors, so I think I'm just going to do just a very simple quilting motif on it. Nothing fancy at all. Nothing custom quilting, just something that will blend in and not stand out. Okay, I've got all the first points onto these 5 blocks that I'm sewing, and I need, where'd my scissor go? Here it is. So I'll just clip this end one, and then I pull this all the way back. All the chain piecing, I pull it all the way back, and I start at the beginning. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, now that they're like this, I'm going to sew from here to here, right next to that line, and that will make the bonus triangle that I need to make those broken dishes blocks. Oops. Then I clip that one off that I left under my machine. And then I'm just going to go like this and flip these. I'm leaving them in the chain because that keeps all of the pieces from the same block together. And I also leave them in a chain because they're easier to feed into the machine that way. It saves time. I don't have to re-pick up the block and reposition everything so much. I can feed them right through the machine. Occasionally I have to flip a piece or straighten something, but for the most part, I can just feed them right through the machine. I don't even know how or why I started this method or where the idea came from. I've been doing it so long, it's just natural for me. So whenever I'm going to make flying geese blocks, I make the bonus triangles, unless I'm only making them with 1.5 pieces. As long as the piece is 2 inches or 2.5 inches or 3.5 inches, then I always make bonus triangles. In fact, right here, these are all the bonus triangles that I made while I was making the mystery quilt. So I've got a whole bunch of them in here. One day I'm going to sit down and iron all these, and then I'm going to come up with something to make with them because I already have half the job done. Some people just take and throw those away, and I'm too frugal to do that, so I don't do that. I'll come up with enough to make some kind of baby quilt, add a little extra fabric with it. It'll all be good, and I'll love it. So I've fed all of the ones that were on the chain into the machine, but then I have this one left over that was the beginning piece when I started the chain, and now it's going to be the ending piece. And I'm going to want to clip those apart. So what I'm going to do is, now's the time I'm going to add one of these broken dishes blocks. So I already have these sewn together from before, and so I just have to put the final seam in them. And then I'll have a broken dishes block. And that broken dishes block is going to stay under my needle, so I don't have to worry about threads coming loose or anything like that. And right now I am clipping apart my flying geese. And so what I'm doing is, they have the line, the parallel lines you can see there, so I'm taking a scissor and I'm cutting in between the 2 lines. And when I cut in between the 2 lines, this begins the first star point of my flying goose, and this piece makes a half square triangle block. And these are just tiny, they're only like 1.5 inches big, but that's okay. As I said earlier, I talked a little bit more about that in my video that shows exactly how to make these blocks and how to make the broken dishes blocks from them. It is kind of hard to do a task and talk at the same time. It's worse than walking and chewing gum. Oh dear. So When I do make these blocks, I usually do them in a set of 4, 5, or 6 at a time. I don't do one block at a time because I like to feed through a big chain. And once I'm done here, I will iron these pieces. I'm just going to leave the half square triangles for now for the sake of time and for filming. I don't want to be turned away from the camera for too long, and that will happen if I take time to iron all of those. I'll do that off camera after you're all gone, and I'll probably sew them later this week into the broken dishes blocks. My dog Rosie is loving that I'm not at my full-time job anymore because she's getting plenty of time out of the kennel, and she's able to snooze and sun herself in all the places that she likes to, and her food is being fed to her more timely because I'm not at work so long. I always felt bad. It's hard to have a job that you're gone for 10 hours when you have a dog that might be in a kennel. So over here, I have an ironing station, so I'm going to iron some of my blocks to make the flying geese. I have a little wool mat here on a file cabinet. I recently got the file cabinet at a thrift store. It's a great file cabinet. It has a lid that lifts up from the top, and in it I can store stuff. And it's the right height to be right next to my sewing machine that I can use the top as a table as well. And so I have a small 12 by 12 wool ironing mat. And I can iron here, and I have a small travel iron that I use at this station. I have another iron big with an ironing board that sits right over there. But this one just sits here and on the filing cabinet, and then I can use it there. I'm just ironing these towards the star point. And just like that, they're all ironed. We can start back with the next thing to do. So what happens now is we have one star point sewn on here. So I'm going to take another 2-inch square, and I'm going to put it on here, and then I'm going to sew from corner to corner again. And you might remember I had that broken dish block here that was under my needle, and now I can cut that off and open it up, and you can see that I have a broken dish block. So I'll just iron that one quick. And then I have a bucket over here that I keep them in. This is this week's count of broken dishes blocks, and this is my basket full of all of the broken dishes blocks that I made previous to today, over the last month or so, or 2 months. If somebody asked my favorite sewing notion in my sewing room, unbelievably, I would probably say this dishwasher packet tote or the little container from the dishwasher packets. I keep a lot of things in there. You can see, like in here, these are the blocks that will be my broken dishes blocks for this week. And this one I already showed you. This is the one that has the pieces for the Old Town Mystery, the bonus blocks that are left over. And this one has all of the pieces of my star blocks. I have them in various other places around my sewing room. I just use them to clean and organize, and they're a nice little size, especially if you're working with small blocks. And a lot of times I do prefer to work with smaller blocks. Not very often do I make a quilt that has like 12-inch blocks in it, unless it's like a mystery quilt block and I had no idea how big the block was going to be. You can see I continually keep something under that needle. Okay. Okay, this one took me a second to... Okay, so the fabric that I used for this is a fabric that has lines on the diagonal. So I was just trying to lay my piece down so that the diagonals would stay the same. Not that it matters because it doesn't, but I'm just kind of playing around and doing that. As I said, anything goes as far as this quilt goes, but my only rule right now is not to have very much cream in the quilt, or white, or it's okay if it's tan, but not a light color. And my other rule for me, I can't talk. Another rule for me right now is to try to have the prints lean towards being a Civil War print or a reproduction fabric print. I am probably one of the oddball people left that I still love reproduction prints. I know a lot of people have moved on and are sewing with brighter prints. Me, I love the old grungy, deep jewel tone colors of the reproduction fabrics. Those are my favorite. I like to have those because my house is primarily antiques and primitive pieces. So if I have antiques and primitive pieces, it just makes sense to have quilts that go along with that theme. Looks like I just have the star points for one more block after this one. So I gotta get those out. Oops, wrong. I gotta do the brown. That's one thing that gets to be a little tricky as far as organization goes, to make sure that you put the right color of points on the blanks, because after the first run through you have 4 corner pieces left and you have 4 point pieces left, and sometimes it's I gotta think twice before I my pieces down. Okay, so all of those are through. So again, I'm going to use one of these broken dishes pieces that I've already sewn together as my leader and ender. So I'm going to put this on like this, flip the seams. I don't generally pin much at all. I just flip and nestle seams for the most part and don't do much ironing or pinning. So I'm back here again, and I've got the one side sewn in the diagonal, so I'm going to come right next to it and I'm going to sew the other piece, or the other seam, and that will make another set of broken dishes. And again, all of that stays under the needle, and I can clip off this broken dishes block, and here I have another one done. I'm going to throw that in my bucket for completed ones for the week. I'll iron it later. Being I'm a busy mom and grandma, I often just throw all of those in a bucket. Like today when I sat down, I already had the start of some star blocks, and so I finished those before I started sewing with you, because I wanted to give a fresh start for the beginning of the video, and so I could explain to you what I was doing. So I finished up those blocks. So I have 6 blocks here that I already finished today, and those are just here in a pile. And at some point during the week, my kids are gonna, one kid is gonna calling in to be up here in the sewing room, and so I'll turn my phone on speaker and then I'll just iron those blocks. I've been doing that for years and years and years. Many years ago, I used to be an in-home childcare provider, and so in the evening after childcare was done, I'd run upstairs and I would sew and do some stuff like this, and then I'd take that downstairs, and then while the kids napped, I would because I had all the kids napping on the main floor. I'd have all those napping in the living room, and then I would go out to the kitchen, but I could move around in the house, but I had to be quiet so I didn't wake up the sleeping kids. So I would just iron those then. I used to cut quilts off then, and over the course of a week of nap times, I could get a quilt cut out. I often did that. Okay. So my last one's through the machine. So again, I'm gonna quick lay out a broken dishes block, so I'll always have something under that needle. I've got that set, and I'm just gonna feed these two pieces. The term for that, if you've never done that before, is called a leader and an ender. So my chain is all sewn. Here my blocks look like this now. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut between these two lines on the diagonal. And the one piece is going to make the flying geese block, and the other one is going to make half square triangles. And those half square triangles I'll later sew into those broken dishes blocks. If you use this method, I want to encourage you to make sure you have a system for how far apart you sew that line to this one, because I know that my presser foot is wide enough, and if I use the width of my presser foot, I can sew that wide, and I'll get, this piece will be 1.5 inches, and this will be the regular size of the flying goose. That way I don't have to trim the pieces down, but it took me a little while, and I've had to figure it out on a couple different of my sewing machines. But for this machine that I'm using right now, that's not a problem. That's it turns out to be the right width. Okay, working our way through this stack, and then the next thing that I'll be doing after this is I'll be turning my chair and using the iron again to sew the rest of the piece of the flying geese blocks. Looks like I got one more block worth to cut. I am super excited about this quilt because, like I said, I really want a new quilt for my king size bed. So those are cut. I'm going to set these, the triangle pieces, to the side here, and I'll iron those at another point in time and catch up with making those. But for now, I'm going to keep working on the star blocks. So maybe I'll stop for a second and show you. This is how the flying geese blocks turned out. So you can see that the 2 by 2 inch pieces are here. Those are the star points, and the red in the background piece, that was the 3.5 by 2 inch piece. Now I'll just quickly finish ironing these up. When I had told you that I was gone for the weekend and had a busy weekend with the guy I'm dating, we went to the play, Dear Evan Hansen. It was a great play. We had a good time going, but it was a very heavy, emotional play. It wasn't like fun and uplifting, but it gave a person a lot to think about as we left, and we had great discussion after the movie. But it was a heavy show. Very good though. There is a movie of it out if you ever want to watch the movie Dear Evan Hansen, and then you can see what I'm talking about. It has the topic of suicide, so if that's something that's hard for you, you might want to skip that. I mean, suicide's hard for everybody, but if you have something that happened in your personal life, you might be a extra sensitive towards it. Okay, so I just put these out on this little design board. And there it is, just like that. So that's how the star block will come together. So we take the centerpiece that goes in the middle. Here's 2 of the flying geese units that we just made. Here's the other 2 flying geese units we just made. And then there's these 4 corners that will complete the block. So I'm going to start sewing those together, but I just wanted to show you what they will look like. I'm going to grab these pieces and then we'll get going. A friend of mine gave these design boards to me. She told me she got them off Amazon. They're not fancy, but I really like them and they work really well. They're a little bit cushy. The stuff does like hold together on them, and they're great if you're putting together a complicated block so you can lay it out and see how it looks. It also works great if I'm filming Sew with Jo videos and I can just show you what the block's going to look like. Okay, so when I feed these, I'm basically making the block into 3 rows. I'm going to set this aside here first. And clip those so it's ready to go through next time I sew. This is what I'm clipping here. This is one of the broken dishes blocks. Okay, so that's ready to go next time I need one. So I sewed the middle section together. I always put that through the machine first. And so I had sewn 1 flying geese unit to it. Now I'm going to sew the other flying geese to it. And then I do the side pieces. Like as I said, I've kind of developed a little way of doing this because I always like something to be under my needle. So that was one of the outer sections, and now I'm going to put together the other outer section like this. Just put right sides together here and then run that through the machine. Okay, and as I said, I always put the middle piece through first, so that means the middle piece will come out first. And so then I'll have a middle piece and a side piece. Those are the 2 that aren't under my needle. And then I can put them together. And like I said earlier, I don't pin. I just nestle the seams. And then I just sew that on. I know some people want to iron and some people want to pin. I am not that girl. Okay, so I have the 1 row that's not attached yet, and then I have the center and the other piece that's attached. I'm going to leave those here, and then I'm just going to start my next block. And I'm going to leave that under the needle so I don't have to deal with the threads. Okay. I'm just feeding that next block through. Okay, so I have that clipped apart, and I'm going to stop and clip take the first block, and I'm going to put the first block. So I have this one that was already sewn, and I'm going to add this to it. And now this will act as my leader and ender, because it's ending the previous block right now. And then I'm going to clip off the last piece from the second block I started sewing. So then I'm going to go back to the second block because the first block is now acting as my ender. And again, I'm going to put the middle section through. This block got done. It's the first block of our sewing session today. So I'll put that one over here. Like I said, I'll iron those later. And then now I'm working with the second block. I've got this section through. Now I'm going to add this section. Okay, and so I have the two sections of that block in under the machine, so I'm going to start putting in my next block. It may seem kind of confusing to you how I do this, but I've been doing it so long that it just comes as natural and normal to me. Okay, so I'm going back to the block that was under the machine, and I'm going to add that border or the side piece to it. Okay, let me check here. And then we're going to feed the pieces for that other block through. And then I can show you our second block is done, because that one came through. And so that's the second block of our day. I can't tell you how much I love having this work surface, an organizing space when I sew. I use it so much. Okay, now we got the next block. Whoops, I didn't put those with the right block. I only have 2 blocks left to sew. After the one that's under the needle. We're just plugging along. Normally when I'm not filming, I can sew much quicker. The blocks don't take me as long, but as long as I'm filming, it just takes a little longer. Oh, because I go slower and I stop and talk and all of those things. As I'm filming this, it's early March. I believe it's March 10th, but now that I'm not working, I don't keep track of the days nearly as well as I used to. Is that terrible? The weather has been just glorious. I am slated to take Rosie for a walk here in a little bit. I have a friend that I walk with, the person I told, Carla of Long Arm Quilting Inspirations. We both have dogs. Our dogs are friends. And oh, I'm out of thread. Of course I'm out of thread in the bobbing. We usually, well, as long as the weather's nice, we usually try to walk a couple times a week together. And today is our day to walk, which I'm very excited about. Okay, got my bobbin here filled, new thread. We'll be on our way shortly. Okay. Okay, then here's our next block is done. So mid-filming, I had a little error. I didn't have my camera plugged into a power source, so my battery expired. So I'm a little bit frustrated about that because I have no idea where I was at with filming. And then in the meantime, I walked the dog, I met a friend that I told you about earlier, and I finished the blocks, but I don't know quite where I was at, so I'm just going to show you my finished blocks. So these are the ones we finished in this session of Sew with Jo. This one, this one, this one, and this one. This one I think is one of my favorite ones. I love pink and brown. I think that makes a great color combo. So we got those sewn. I've got a couple more broken dish blocks thrown into my little bucket here for the broken dishes quilt that I'm making at the same time. It was a fun time here sewing with you today. I'm sorry if the video ended up being a little bit shorter than you expected. It was a little shorter than I expected too, just because my battery was exhausted. So I'm going to make the best of this because I've already filmed this 2 times already, trying to get a Sew with Jo video out, and I don't want to delay it again. So just rest assured I'll be a little bit more with it next time around. I'm a little rusty, and I hope you can bear with me. So thanks so much for listening and watching. If you're stitching or doing something, you're probably just listening, and if you're sewing along, you might be looking up from time to time. And so this is the point where I'll say goodbye, and you can see what I'm up to day at my blog, joescountryjunction.com. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.